like the hat?
No, I'm not panicked, Sid. This is the sound of low-level terror. I mean, have you seen this letter? They're not allowing my Tahiti trip. It was research, all vanilla. My vanilla book, you know, vanilla Tahiti, they go together. Yes, we needed the yacht. It was a research vessel. All right, how much? $8,000. Where am I going to get $8,000? Hold on, it's this stupid television commercial. Hold on a second, Sid.
Great pudding flavor. Remember, the winning entry could wake up to 5,000 clams in their stocking. And I'm not talking seafood. Just send your entries to Anti-Pudding, care of Amalgamated Foodstuffs Incorporated. Oh, and don't forget, have them postmarked no later than...
Listen, Sid, can you keep the feds off of me for another couple of days? Good, great, perfect, bye. Well, Anti-Pudding, why don't you just save yourself some trouble and go ahead and cut me the check? Besides, it's about time somebody wrestled pudding back from the money-grubbing industrialists who've monopolized it for so many years. I say pudding starts in the home. With a little know-how, a few decent ingredients, and some common everyday tools, pudding could be the perfect holiday treat. Not to mention, seriously. Before we can pursue my proper place in the pantheon of pudding history and pay off the IRS, we really should define exactly what it is we mean when we say pudding. I read from a famous culinary tome. Pudding, any of numerous dishes, sweet or savory, served hot or cold, which are prepared in a variety of ways. That's specific, isn't it? Unfortunately, etymology's not much more help. For instance, we have here that the word pudding derives from the medieval French and it winds its way all the way back to the Latin patellus, which means either sausage or botulism, depending on how you translate it. Luckily, we can get some clarification from the British Isles, because 4 out of 5 anthropologists who eat pudding do believe that our modern idea of that dessert was born there. Life! England's first glimpse of pudding probably looked a lot like this. Delivered to their shores by Roman soldiers, this proto-haggis lives on today in the Cajun tradition of boudin rouge, or blood pudding. Some would even argue it lives on in the tradition that we call hot dogs, which definitely aren't dessert. Centuries passed, empires fell. And in England, pudding came to mean any bready mass, sweet, savory, edible, or otherwise. Yorkshire pudding, a baked popover, and Christmas pudding, a boiled and booze-drenched fruitcake, are famous examples of puddings from this period, only they're not really puddings at all. By the dawn of the 20th century, pudding had come to mean just about any dessert you could deliver to an English table. While American kids were shouting, "Hey Mom, what's for dessert?" English kids were saying, "Hey Mom, what's for pud?" Now, speaking of the other side of the pond, with the possible exception of this colonial cornmeal curiosity, hasty pudding, aka loblolly, American puddings are sweet and spoonable, closely akin to both mousses and custards. Similarities aside, differences abound. For instance, a mousse gets its light and fluffy texture from the inclusion of whipped egg whites and or cream. A custard's cuttable curd comes courtesy of the coagulative power of the egg yolk. Puddings, on the other hand, and I mean true puddings, are always thickened by the gelatinization of starch. Light. Although we have certainly talked about starch gelatinization, the way in which starch granules swell and erupt in a hot liquid, on the show many times in the past, we've never really gotten into what starch is, nor have we dealt with the fact that the composition of starch in, say, rice is different from that in a potato or in wheat flour. Well, we'll be vague no more. Here's the deal. Plants use photosynthesis to make energy in the form of a simple sugar called glucose. Now, we'll say for a moment that this battery is a molecule of glucose. Now, plants store this energy in 2 different types of structure. Say hello to amylose. Amylose is really nothing but a long, very, very, very long chain of glucose molecules. This is a starch, but so is this. Bring her on down. The branched version is called amylopectin. Now, when a starch granule swells and bursts in hot liquid, zillions of these molecules are released. They tangle up, trap water, and thicken whatever they're in. However, amylopectin and amylose have different properties, and different types of plants contain varying proportions of each, which is why cornstarch doesn't thicken the same way that potato starch does, or the way that flour does. But in the end, it's all just sugar. But since these molecules are really, really gigantic, our taste buds can't tangle with them, so they don't taste like anything at all. For centuries, rice has been a key dessert ingredient in the cuisines of cultures heavily vested in said cereal. Although many of these cultures do have a form of rice pudding, I lean towards those that hail from the Indian subcontinent, where rice is moistened with some milk and then subtly flavored with everything from raisins to almonds, pistachios, rosewater, saffron, and cardamom. But first and foremost, we need rice. A cup of long grain rice, cooked long grain rice. Now, rice pudding should never ever be made with converted rice or boil in the bag rice, because those rices have been processed in order to remove some of the free starch. They do that because they want their rice to not be sticky. We, on the other hand, need sticky. We need starch. Now, as for the rest of the software, we will require the services of 1 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of heavy cream, 3/4 of a cup of coconut milk from a can, 2 ounces, that's about 1/4 of a cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom, and 1.5 ounces each of golden raisins and chopped unsalted pistachios. For you volumetric fans, that's about 1/3 of a cup each. We will also require in the hardware division 1 rubber or silicone spatula and 1 large nonstick skillet. First ingredient in the pan, our 1 cup of milk, followed immediately by our 1 cup of liberated long grain. Dump that right into the pan. And just stir until this comes to a boil. Now, yes, of course, this would come to a boil even faster if we were using high heat. But speed is not the issue here, okay? I don't want to go fast. What I want to do is to do this slowly so that we liberate some starch from the grains. Think risotto. You don't rush risotto, do you? Of course not. Take your time, stir occasionally, bring to a boil. Once you have hit a boil, as we have, drop the heat to low and simmer until slightly thickened, about 5 minutes, and stir often, won't you? When your mixture does this, you are ready to add the rest of the ingredients. So boost your heat to medium, pour in both the cream and the coconut milk. Very nice. And then the sugar and the cardamom. Now, the cardamom is going to want to clump up on you, so I suggest you switch over to a whisk just for a couple of minutes. And don't worry, your nonstick can take it. When it comes back to a boil, drop the heat to low and cook for another 5 minutes or until it reaches a nice, thick, creamy consistency like this. Then, kill the heat and add the goodness. We're going to go with the pistachios and the raisins. I'll just stir that in and then portion up into small cups, thusly, and serve either warm or chill. I like to let them sit overnight. I think they're better that way.
Holidays are right around the corner, Puddinheads, so you better hurry. Remember, more recipes mean more chances to win. So enter as often as you like. Bye-bye, Muppets.
So, I can enter as often as I like, Fascinating. Tapioca is manufactured from the roots of the cassava plant, a New World plant that today is grown mostly in Africa and Asia. Now, while most of you are probably familiar with the powdered form of tapioca, it's the little pellets or pearls that make tapioca unique. Now, to make these little boogers, cassava roots are smushed into a kind of pulp, and then they're kneaded and wrung out until the fibers have given up all the starch that they possibly can. Then this liquid is kind of dropped onto a hot plate in such a way so that they kind of form the pearls as the moisture cooks away. As you can see, this is not a procedure that should be undertaken by amateurs. Now, quick cooking tapioca can be found in most major markets. However, landing these pearls may require that you take a trip to the ethnic or Asian aisle if you can't find it with the rest of the starches. When you get your tapioca home, you're going to need to soak it before you can cook with it. Now, I recommend an overnight soak, unless, of course, you use that quick cooking variety. But you wouldn't do that, would you? No. So, 3½ ounces of dry tapioca by weight. That's about half a cup. Go into a vessel large enough to hold a pint of cold water. There you go. Just leave this on the counter. Bye. The next morning, your tapioca will be nice and soft and ready to go, but you have to drain it. There's too much free starch floating around in that water. So drain it well and then move it to your slow cooker. An electric slow cooker, of course. Then add 2½ cups of whole milk. Don't try using skim or 2%. Follow that up with 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Don't try skimping there either. Then a pinch of salt. Stir everything together. Pop on the lid and set the cooker to cook on high for 2 hours. As you can see, many of the starch granules have exploded, throwing their snake-like tangles out into the dairy. But the tapioca pearls themselves are still intact, and that is a very, very good thing. Now, to augment the texture of this pudding, we are going to steal one small trick from the custard world and beat 1 egg yolk with about 1/3 cup of sugar. We're just going to beat that into a paste. There. And now we temper. Tempering, as you may recall, is a process by which we avoid the curdling of eggs that often results when hot stuff is added too fast. By working the hot stuff a wee bit at a time into the eggs, we can slowly elevate the temperature of the eggs. Now, once you work 1 cup to 1.5 cups of the hot mixture into the eggs, you can then move the egg mixture back into the tapioca. Just stir it in very, very thoroughly. Now all we need is the zest of 1 lemon. By zest, we refer to the outermost yellow layer of the peel, which contains almost all of the essential oils this citrus possesses. The trick is, this layer is extraordinarily thin, and just below it is the nasty fibrous pith, the stuff they make pith helmets out of. Our job, therefore, is to remove as much of this as we can while leaving as much of this behind. Now, to complicate matters, in order to extract maximum flavor, we need our zest to be very, very fine. Therefore, we must choose our hardware wisely. Despite its moniker, zester is actually the last thing you want to use to remove zest because it takes off way too little and requires way too much force to use. Nope, we're definitely going to go with a flat grater, okay? Now, we want one that has shallow teeth, so shallow that if you run your finger across the face of it, there won't be any negative effect. Not that. Oh, now this one has the appropriate shallowness, but the teeth are a little bit too wide. Here we have it, shallow and narrow. Now, place the grater flat on either a flexible mat or a piece of wax paper and lightly draw the orb across, turning it as you go. There. Add your freshly harvested lemon zest to the tapioca pudding, stir it in, and then let it cook covered for another 15 minutes. Without its raincoat, this little lemon will dry out fast. So if you want to save it, wrap it in a couple of layers of plastic wrap and stash in your fridge. And please don't stare. It's a little embarrassed. Like the hat? Move your creation to an airtight container and press a layer of plastic wrap right down on the surface. That'll prevent a skin from forming. Let it cool on the counter for about an hour and then stash it in the refrigerator until thoroughly chilled. I'm back.
That's right, pudding lovers. We've added an additional bonus contest. Whoever can come up with a faster, more chocolatey chocolate pudding than Auntie's Choco Fix will win an additional 3,000 simoleons come New Year's Day. Good luck, Puddinheads.
So, it's instant she wants. Well, then it's instant she'll get. You know, instant pudding has an amazing history. It was developed as a restorative by one Alfred Bird, a 19th century English pharmacist whose wife suffered from a wide range of stomach illnesses, including acute allergies to both eggs and yeast. Determined to find a dessert that his wife could enjoy without having any discomfort, Bird finally struck upon a way to use a flour made from corn to set a flavored mixture, much like a custard, only creamier. Mr. and Mrs. Bird started to serve this concoction at dinner parties, and it was such a hit that within a year, Alfred Bird and Sons of Birmingham, England, were producing the first instant pudding. Now, we may not have access to the modern industrial instant pudding pantry, but let's see if we can just get by on good old-fashioned know-how. Let's make up a batch, shall we? All we need is 1 3/4 cups of our mix. That goes into a saucepan or saucier, along with 2 cups of milk. Just whisk that in, and 2 cups of heavy cream. Hey, I didn't say this was low fat. We're going to turn the heat to medium, bring this to a boil. When it hits a boil, we're going to then reduce the heat to low and let this simmer for 4 minutes. The reason? Well, what we've got to make sure of is that all the starches are gelatinized. Now, you don't have to do this step with, Auntie Puddin's pudding, because packaged puddings use modified starches and other industrial products that we don't have, want, or need. Now, we kill the heat and whisk in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You don't want to do that on the heat because the flavor will dissipate. Now, since cocoa powder does have a tendency to lump up, we are going to run this through a sieve. Unlike Auntie Puddin's industrial spooge, our pudding actually does contain milk. Milk contains the protein casein, which means this will get a skin on it if we don't prevent it. Best way to do that? A nice layer of plastic wrap placed right down on the surface of the pudding. And don't worry, when the pudding chills, it won't stick a bit. Now, this goes into the refrigerator for at least 4 hours before enjoying. As for the rest of your mix, keep this in your pantry for up to 6 months. Can't go any longer than that, though, because the milk powder in here contains fat, and that will eventually go rancid. I think you'll use it pretty quick.
Today in local news, a disaster unfolded for dessert diva Auntie Puddin when police and IRS agents raided her downtown factory and arrested her for tax evasion and mail fraud. At first it appeared the old girl would go peacefully, but when the TV lights came on, she made a break for it, and in doing so revealed her true identity. Authorities have discovered that Auntie Puddin is actually Coco Carl, the fugitive confection king who jumped bail on fraud charges over a year ago.
Well, that certainly explains the 5 o'clock shadow. Oh well. Bye-bye money. I guess the IRS will be around in a few days to pick me up, but that's okay. It's worth it. If just 1 or 2 million of you would rise up and take the pudding bowl in hand and make your own, then there's hope. There's hope that once again pudding can be a food of the people, by the people, for the people. Not to mention really good eats. See you next time. I hope.